So what are you waiting for?
I don't know, something amazing, I guess.
Marketing can be a very tricky thing to get right. Understanding the pulse of your audience and what might resonate with them is crucial for establishing a good first impression and generating hype for whatever it is you may be selling. But of course, for video games, it doesn't just stop there, as in this day and age, it feels like developers and publishers are consistently marketing their game from the day they announce to the day they release. There are multiple opportunities for developers to showcase their game. How they approach those opportunities becomes more and more important with how social media evolves as a part of our society. And I think it's actually quite fitting for the topic of today's video that the last two Battlefield titles were polar opposites of one another in how the game was marketed and received. Battlefield 1 was widely acclaimed for its marketing, and Battlefield 5, well, not so much. So here we are now in the first week of September, around 6 weeks away from the very anticipated Battlefield 2042 launch. I know, I'm really excited for it. And it's been mostly quiet on the Western Front. DICE released about a minute and a half of specialist gameplay recently, which you are now seeing in the background of the video, and we have been left constantly refreshing our social media feeds, waiting for the announcement of what has seemed like an ever-elusive beta, which as of now has not been announced but will be announced at some point. DICE has been steadily drip-feeding news about the game, but the pace has been very slow and often followed by complete radio silence, which is odd considering DICE absolutely nailed the first two trailers for the game and came out swinging. But since the release of the Exodus short film, the most mention that the game has gotten publicly was by an IGN host at Gamescom that clearly uses too much tanning oil, saying that he wasn't going to play their game in front of tens of thousands of people. That's a pretty tough one to swallow, and the information about how the game actually works and functions outside of its scripted trailers has been lacking. The latest batch of rumors have suggested that the Battlefield 2042 beta will be on the 22nd of September. Assuming that the game itself doesn't get delayed, it will leave about 3 weeks between the end of the week-long beta and the release of the game, which isn't a whole lot of time to fix any potential issues that the game has. The drama around the mystery of the game's beta and the game's negligible presence at Gamescom has caused a bit of a stir in the Battlefield community. Some players are starting to get worried and see the lack of communication and gameplay as red flags for the launch of the game itself. Others see the chosen silence by DICE as good marketing, as we are all talking about the game without them doing much of anything. I think most people would be comfortable in saying that Battlefield 2042 is a very important game for the FPS genre, and that the game's marketing has been curiously quiet for such a huge game. It begs the question, is Battlefield 2042's marketing genius or confusing? Everybody will have their subjective opinions, but I imagine, like with most things, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. The situation has been amplified by Activision and Call of Duty, who, in the span of about a week, have completely caught up to Battlefield, having revealed their game for this year, released extended gameplay, hosted a public alpha, and announced a beta, whereas DICE revealed the game in early June, and the majority of the player base had barely seen significant gameplay up until the specialist gameplay released the other day. Now, the reason I bring up Call of Duty isn't to compare and contrast the two marketing campaigns, but I don't think it would be too inaccurate to say that the lack of an announced beta for Battlefield 2042 is being amplified because of this recent surge by Call of Duty, and whether or not we really like to admit it, despite being very different games, they are direct competition for one another. And fans take notice of what both sides are doing. Battlefield fans are looking at Call of Duty fans playing outside with their new toys while they are stuck inside waiting for their toys to arrive, even though they ordered their toys 2 months in advance. It's a juvenile example, sure, but I think it does hold some merit, and despite both franchises being in undesirable states at the moment, I think the stakes are much higher for Battlefield, considering that if Battlefield 2042 flops like Battlefield 5 did, DICE and EA can't just regurgitate another game the following year like Call of Duty can, and I think everybody recognizes this. Battlefield 2042 needs to be a success for EA. There is so much on the line here for DICE and EA, having brought in multiple development companies and added extra time to make sure that this game is exactly the hit that it needs to be. And it's that prevailing thought that I keep thinking about during all of this and don't quite understand. If Battlefield 2042 needs to be a smash hit, then why so silent in communication, and why the sudden drop of momentum from the reveal trailers? You'd think it would be the opposite. I think that people that consider the marketing for 2042 to be quote-unquote genius do have a point in some regard. If the goal is to get the community to be talking about the game and cultivating conversation, they are succeeding in flying colors, and even if a fair portion of that talk is about how people are worried about the launch of the game considering how little we actually know about it, the old adage that there is no such thing as bad publicity rings true here. Under normal circumstances, I think that a marketing campaign similar to how they are conducting the one right now would actually be quite good. It's worked well for many other publishers and developers, but I don't consider this to be normal circumstances. Coming off a game that drastically undersold and was not well received by fans, I would think that you would want to show off as much as you can about the game so you can sell copies and reel back in the spurned player base. But that's not the strategy that DICE and EA have adopted, and it's not to say that the hush marketing of Battlefield 2042 is an inherently bad idea. I think it's a good one, but it's just not the right time for it, which is why I labeled the marketing as genius, yet confusing. If the goal of Battlefield 2042 was to return back to the grand sandbox style of all-out warfare that Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 had, then the first two trailers of the game captured that sentiment perfectly with copious amounts of nostalgia and fan service. I think it wouldn't be inaccurate to say that a lot of people got on board with Battlefield 2042 after those two trailers. But the next thing that players will be wanting to see before making a purchasing decision is gameplay, and that is something that Battlefield, traditionally speaking, has been very good about, whether it's long gameplay segments in Battlefield 4 or a live stream of alpha gameplay provided by celebrities and shoutcasted on location with Battlefield 1, or even Battlefield 5 having a playable closed alpha in June of 2018 that was not NDA locked. The recent history of Battlefield has given players a lot of chances to play early and openly, so the outlier being 2042 feels very weird in that context. Gameplay is the most important part of the marketing of a game. The trailers can be spectacular, but they only provide entry-level interest in the product, but in the end, the gameplay is what players are going to care the most about. Which is why when you think about the fact that we are 6 weeks away from the launch of the game and there has been minimal gameplay and the ones who have played early gameplay are locked by NDA, you can absolutely understand why players are starting to get extremely worried about the game and that it is A, not ready, or B, going to be delayed. And this feeling of worry is growing stronger the longer the beta remains unannounced and the game gets closer to launch. It's bad to the point that players broke their NDA contracts and risked getting their accounts banned just to post gameplay, which in itself damages the game. And this is not the attitude that you want to be receiving from a good portion of the player base when your last major release in Battlefield 5 was a horrendous flop. Now, you can argue how much player entitlement factors into everything. Are we really entitled to be playing the game early, and are we entitled to them telling us much of anything? Not inherently, no, but at the end of it all, this is a business and there is an ebb and flow that needs to be maintained between consumer and provider. Betas and gameplay are essentially the sales pitch of the game, so even though we aren't inherently entitled to gameplay or beta releases, we do expect something so we can decide how to spend our money, and providers or developers want to show off their game so they can get more sales or more interest in the game overall. It all goes back to the little note that I made about marketing at the very beginning of the video. Marketing is tricky. Understanding your audience is important. There are people who do love Battlefield 5, but most did not, and people understand the stakes of a game like Battlefield 2042 for the franchise. We all want this game to succeed, but we only have seen and know so much about the game, which is why as we get closer to launch, people are just as worried as they are excited. The first few trailers did an excellent job at generating hype and striking the right nerves to get people on board for the game, but I don't feel like DICE have used this momentum to their advantage. There is a lot of distrust in the Battlefield community between the community and the developers, which is why this marketing decision to keep things close to the chest and essentially saying, trust us, this game's going to be great, isn't going over well with some fans. The idea of a quiet marketing campaign isn't a bad one, it's just poorly timed. From what I see, players want transparency. They want to know what they are getting into, what they're going to be spending their money on after a game in Battlefield 5 that never quite knew what it was from the very beginning. The beta will happen in September, that's pretty much a fact, but as we end the discussion today, I wonder what you all would prefer. Would you prefer a player base going into a beta worried and looking for things to be unfinished and buggy because they haven't seen a lot of gameplay? Or would you rather have a player base going into the beta excited to try everything because they have seen a lot of gameplay? And then ask yourself if you feel like a combination of those two realities is happening, because that's how I feel personally with Battlefield 2042, and it's why the marketing of the game is genius, yet very confusing. That's the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, as it helps me tremendously. What do you think of DICE's marketing of the game so far? Once again, if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I will be posting tons of Battlefield 2042 content leading up to the game's releasing. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday on Twitch at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so follow me there if you wish. Once again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Catalyst, and I will see you all another time.